Welcome to Masters of Masking, the podcast for and about those who've discovered their neurodivergent later in life. Join us as we dive into the lives of individuals with autism, ADHD, CPTSD and more. Hear their stories, learn about their challenges and celebrate their triumphs. Living, loving and thriving in their unique everyday lives. You're not alone, let's unmask the extraordinary together. Masters of Masking, tune in and embrace the journey.
The second you start recording, my dog's just going scratch, scratch, scratch in the garden. She doesn't go out for hours, but hey.
Of course she did. So, welcome to Masters of Masking. I have the wonderful Ruthanne with me today, and Ruthanne is the director, CEO, or she's the person in charge of BrightAlternative, and they offer PA services to people with ADHD and autism, specifically entrepreneurs with disabilities. And I believe the PA part of that isn't just kind of assisting with technical stuff, it's also gardeners and cleaners and everything to do with keeping us organized, is it not?
Yeah,
so anything. I'm gonna stop fiddling with my mouse because I've already messed up with that today, and I'm gonna leave it to one side and we're gonna start to chat. Hello. So I'm gonna fill a little bit in before this. Ruthanne and I have got a personal relationship of many years.
Yeah, long time.
So I am telling myself off because it's taken the excuse of having a podcast to actually get online and have a chat with each other.
Yeah, but we chat a lot.
We chat a lot messenger wise, don't we? But and in between Facebook posts and stuff, but actually getting on and having a conversation, it's been a while. So I've asked you to come on to Masters of Masking today because you responded to my questionnaire out there about who could identify with the fact that they discovered neurodivergence later in life when getting the kids diagnosed or whatever. And I know that you've got an interesting story that I have not yet heard.
No, I told you to save it for the podcast. That's why.
Yes, you did. But before we do that, can you just tell me a little bit about what you actually do to help people with disabilities, with neurodivergence, with regards to what you do in your business?
So we're based in the UK, and there's a government's best kept secret here is a thing called Access to Work, where they will provide, like, the basic thing that everyone thinks of is, like, for example, if there was a wheelchair user who wanted to start a new job, but there wasn't a ramp up the stairs to the building, then Access to Work would provide a ramp. Or if someone had a bad back, they could provide an ergonomic chair. But what's less, so people know a lot about that the government will fund those things. But what they don't know is actually if you're neurodivergent, the government will often fund, again, whatever that gap is that you need in order to do your job, in order to stay in your job and successfully do your job on a sort of level playing field. And so that can be, it often is support workers or job aides who will perhaps keep checking your email every day or sit next to you and remind you which thing you were just doing. Because I don't know if you're like me, but if I'm on the phone or on the computer, I'm opening windows and then opening another window and forgetting which tab I was on and what I was doing and what information I was looking for. And it just goes, so sorry, my dog has decided to join us.
It's quite all right.
There we go. And so, like, for example, I myself have now been given Access to Work, and I will do my work on the computer. And in the time that I have my PA with me, I will speak out loud what I'm doing. So I'll go, I'm just looking for Sally's email. I need to reply to that, but I need the thing from Bob to be able to reply to Sally. And Bob said I needed to call Raj so that Raj can email Bob, and then Bob will let me know. And then, so I speak it all out, because then I forget what that, like, steps are
in
the PA, and I'll just suddenly go, oh wait, why am I emailing Sally? And she will, like, do you remember you have to call Raj first, and then Bob's gonna get back to you, and then you can.
That sounds like magic.
I know, honestly, I so needed it. So we provide those PAs to people, but like I say, sometimes what they really need is someone, especially because we work with self-employed people. So what they often need is someone to come in and help organize the space in their office or something like that. So it's not heavily defined by the government. It's just like, as long as if they came and checked, it would be work-based. So they can't come and sort of, go do your grocery shopping. It's got to be like work focused. We can provide people to do grocery shopping, but government won't pay for it. That's all.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So you've got a wide range of services there, but you've got that specific range of I knew, it's like you say, I thought that the access to work was that it was very specific, you know, getting things, equipment and getting stuff organized. I didn't realize that's actually really, really good. That sounds so cool.
And we do, like, I'm a sign language interpreter. So obviously if people are deaf, we provide sign language interpreters, or if they're visually impaired, then it's visual guides. So we do provide some of the more like traditional things that quickly come to mind. But the neurodiverse sort of cover is really helpful as well. So.
Yeah, cool. I'm going to say this to you now. I've just put my water bottle in front of my mouse to stop me from touching the mouse again, because I've got this thing going on, and I'm going to do something daft with it again. Okay, so Masters of Masking is about this, finding out that we are neurodivergent later on in life. And I know that you felt like you were kind of different. You had a different brain from being a teenager. And yeah, I can identify with that too. And I think a lot of people are the same. But tell me then about your longer term story. I shall hand the mic over to you.
You would think that I did this job because I was neurospicy. So I was like, oh, let's set up a company to help neurospicy people. But it went the completely opposite way around. I was a sign language interpreter. So I set up a company to help deaf people have interpreters through Access to Work. And then it just so happened that Access to Work said, oh, we also cover all these other things, you know, mental health, whatever. So it spread out that way. And then I had my assistant manager, who's just lovely and supportive of me, and before I got Access to Work, she was basically doing that supporting of me. And every time we'd have a new client that we'd be applying for, she'd go, do you think we should apply for you? And I was like, what are you saying? What do you mean? Apply for me? No, I'm fine, you know, like normal. No, I knew I wasn't normal, whatever that is, but I was like, no, I don't know what you mean. And it literally took her like 3 years. She never actually went, don't you think you have ADHD? She's very like sweet about it. She sort of let me try and figure it out myself. But she kept saying, I'm sure the government would offer you support because there's certain things that you're finding really difficult, you know. So, but then it took my daughter, my teenage daughter, getting diagnosed autistic ADHD. And we'd always said she had sensory issues. And I kind of thought, oh, I think she's probably on spectrum, but she didn't like being told that, so I just sort of let it be, you know. But when she got diagnosed, then she was very excited about it and kept going, oh my goodness, mum, all the things they've diagnosed me with, you have. So eventually I was like, okay, everyone, just to calm them down, I was like, fine, I'll get an assessment. So years ago they diagnosed me with bipolar disorder.
Okay.
And honestly, from the moment they diagnosed me with bipolar disorder, at a point in my life when I had got divorced and my house was repossessed and we were homeless for 3 months, and they said, wow, you're really depressed. So, but you're often very bubbly and happy. Therefore, that must be bipolar. Now, looking back, I'm like, well, of course I was depressed.
Yeah, just about
and I'm hello. Very appropriate response to the situation.
Yes.
So, but that, and then obviously what they saw as then the mania was obviously my ADHD coming through. So they diagnosed that. And honestly, like I never got any medication for it. I never went into inpatient care or anything like that. So literally from the moment they diagnosed it, I didn't have any symptoms of it. You know, once I got housed and moved on happily in life, it was, you know, but that was years ago. It's like 15 years ago. So I was really lucky that I could go to the GP, to my doctor, and say, I think I've been misdiagnosed by the mental health team because they said 15 years ago I was bipolar, and I'm sure I'm not. I think it's ADHD. So normally you have to wait years for a diagnosis, but because I was going in with almost like a little bit of a complaint saying I think I've been misdiagnosed, they quickly sent me to the mental health team.
Okay.
With a sort of query ADHD. Sorry, I'm signing while I'm talking to you. And so I went into my ADHD, you know, is she bipolar or is she ADHD sort of interview? And it was 1 hour, and he said, okay, just tell me what you're thinking. You know, why do you think we're wrong? And why do you think it might be ADHD? And I said, oh, because this. I listed off. I said, oh, I feel like everybody's playing cards with the cards to their chest, and I just want everyone to show their hand and we can just like make things work. I was like, it's really frustrating when I work in like sometimes I'm working in hospitals, for example, and everyone's very guarded and they're all very like, yeah, well, what information have you got? I'm not going to give you. And it's just all like, I was like, why can't people just say what they're thinking and then we can all solve problems together? But they don't do that. They like hide what they're thinking. You have to guess it and then you can't solve the problem again. And I was just like talking like this. So we get to the end of the hour nearly, and he said, you may have ADHD. I do agree with you. I don't think it's bipolar. You may have ADHD. You'll have to come back for a second session for us to formally diagnose ADHD. And also a lot of it might be covered by the autism. And I was like,
what?
What autism? And he was like holding his pen and paper, and he put the pen and paper down and like leant forward and went, you don't know you're autistic. I was like, no, like that was not on my radar. She said it because she knows autistic. She was like, but I'm exactly like you. And I was like, no, you're not. So at my ADHD assessment, I got diagnosed as autistic, but not as ADHD. And then a month later, they diagnosed ADHD because I had to do the second session. So that was quite a fun way to find out.
That's very similar to number one daughter.
Oh, really?
Very, very similar conversation was had. Yeah. Anyway, so carry on.
But I felt like I won the lottery.
Yes.
On that day, because I just felt like that's before, like, I don't know if anyone else has had it, but there's sad moments, I think, after diagnosis as well, when you think back through life. I'll try and not have this become a counselling session much as I would like.
No, but there is that, isn't it? And they do talk about the grief of finding out something. You're like, gosh, all the things that could have been different if I'd known this, all the things that I could have done differently had I understood those things. But for me personally, I've said this, I also have been like, oh, wow, this is so good.
Yeah, that initial thing was like, oh, it was just relief. And especially the autism, I think because ADHD, I'd already processed thinking, oh, probably I have ADHD. Mm-hmm. So I'd already like processed how there are certain things, so many things I've done wrong in life, so many times. The fact we were homeless was entirely my fault. That the house got repossessed was me messing up the finances and prioritizing the wrong things and not making payments on time. And just, and I should never have even left the house. I like handed the keys back and, so that's just one of the more major things, but so many things in life that I had messed up because of the way I think. And then although but I had become convinced I had ADHD, but I still thought, well, this ADHD explains these mistakes, mm-hmm. But there's also these weird things I've done that are just me being a bit crap.
But I think as well,
centered and blah blah blah. And then when they said autism, I went, oh, this was me being overwhelmed. Like this meltdown. This was me. Whereas, do you know what I mean? When it was like, I don't know, it sort of the both of them covered. Not that I've never done anything wrong off of my own.
Of course not.
It's not all down to that, but so many of the things that I'd in life always like kicked myself and just cringed about whenever I thought of them. When I was found out I had both ADHD and autism, I was like, oh, okay. Like it sort of absolved a lot of my own shame.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So how do you feel then? Because obviously the podcast is called Masters of Masking. When you got your diagnosis, did you start to realize the things that you had been masking to fit in or to feel accepted, or even just to kind of try and be accepted by yourself, maybe?
Yeah, I think, so many things play a part in it. One of my kids, I'll just say one of, so as not to point them out, but one of my kids would get embarrassed that I would always talk to people in the street and make friends with everyone, and sometimes people don't want to be talked to on the train or in the street, or the person in the shop doesn't want to become like your best friend, but lots of them do. Like some of my best friends are people that I met because they were working in the cinema when I went there, and then they became godmother to my kids, you know.
as you do.
Being neurospicy and finding other neurospicy people is like a cool thing. But one of my kids was very much like, just stop it. Like, they don't want you to talk to them. They don't want you to be exuberant like this. They just want to get on with their life. You don't have to do this every time. And I do remember that I got to a point where I went, no, I decide that at this moment, and I didn't know what masking was, but I knew that to not do that would be too much of trying to be normal. So like you said earlier, like I knew from a teenager that I didn't have a normal mind or whatever. And I didn't understand why I was different. I was raised, I'm sure we could talk for hours about this.
But we have done.
Until Christianity. So I sometimes would say, oh, it's obviously because I've been raised in a very, I'm trying to pick my words carefully, extreme-ish sort of religious setting. You know, occasionally I would, you know, use terms like apocalyptic cult because I don't know what.
Comes to mind sometimes.
You know, so yeah, I did grow up like watching the sky, thinking that the whole world was about to like end. So sometimes when I knew I was a bit different, I thought, well, I might not have been born different, but that's going to mess with your head a little bit growing up like that. Yeah. So I sometimes I put it down to that, you know. So I knew that I was trying to be not as weird as I was. So I knew I was trying to not be like the weird Christian I was as a kid. But I also knew when my child was saying people don't want you to talk to them, just stop, I was like, no, like I can't. So it's funny that I didn't use the word masking, but I was kind of aware that these certain things I'm okay doing. Like I'm okay thinking 10 things and only saying one.
Yeah.
Because no one wants to hear all 10. And I'm okay, like not, I don't know what else. Oh, like if I went to a nightclub, I could never just dance. And I don't understand it. The ability to just dance. Like there has to be rules. So I can do like line dancing and country dancing and salsa and things where there are rules and there's moves that you make. But the idea of just going to a nightclub and just like dancing, like I just couldn't do it. So whenever I was in a nightclub, I would scan the floor for the most impressive dancer and I would watch them for 8 beats. And then I would copy exactly what they were dancing. So I'd pick someone far enough away that no one around me knew I was copying them. Mm-hmm. And I would just watch them like through a whole song and I would dance their exact moves 8 beats after them. Okay. Everyone was always like, wow, you're so good at dancing. You're amazing. I'm like, that's because you can be good at dancing. Just copy the best person in the room.
Yeah. Like it's the most normal thing ever to have. Why did you not think of that? Come on.
Copying a cat person. And I kind of realized that I did that a lot in life with a lot of things. That I'd go into a meeting and I'd go, who looks most professional? And then I'd just do what they did. Like if they had sip their drink and that looked professional and cool in the meeting, then I'd wait a few minutes and I'd sip my drink, you know? Like literally things like that. So I knew certain ways to fit in, mm-hmm. and not to talk about Doctor Who and science fiction, and not to mention I learned early on that people don't really want to talk about quantum science. Like they don't want to know that we're on like this, that the planet's moving. That like we don't just go around. We're like hurtling through like tens of thousands of miles an hour all the time, every minute. People don't want to know.
You know, I had an incident on a date like that, and I remember starting the conversation, and the guy had a slice of pizza in his mouth, and he just stopped, and I was like, and I was in mid flow, and I just kind of went. The realization dawned, and I was like, "Oh shit! Just let the guy eat his pizza. Just let the guy eat his pizza, and let me go home."
Like what? So so there are some things that I learned to mask, but I found that I would like, once I found someone that I'd say one thing, like it's like a dam, isn't it? You can hold it and you can be like, I am a professional. When I'm interpreting, often I go in as the interpreter. Hello, I'm the interpreter. Here I am wearing all black. Look, I have my name badge. Now I will sign to the person, blah, blah, blah. And it's all well and good until one person goes something like, oh, I'm going to a Star Trek convention. And I'm like, I'm a nerd. And it's all like, the whole convention thing is out the window. And then you're like, how do I get that back now? Like, I've lost it. They've seen me. And now it's again, you know. So that's kind of like, but yeah, I just remember the whole not talking to anyone and not just being, because again, even when my kids said that, I was like, but that's how most of my friends have been made. So like, if I cut that off, I'm never going to find my people. Because I only find
that was like an innate thing that you really felt.
Yeah. I was like, I can't not do that. I would explode, you know.
Yeah, that's interesting actually, because I'm very much like that in that way. And I remember when we came here, I remember going upstairs. I'd been downstairs at the bar and I'd been trying desperately to be myself with the guy, but I couldn't because I couldn't speak Spanish and the guy couldn't speak English. And I went upstairs and I said to Sam, I can't do this. And he's like, what do you mean? I can't do it. I can't be myself. And he's like, well, what does being yourself mean? I said, I can't crack a joke. I can't be funny. I can't. And he's like, well, is it really that bad? I was like, of course it's that bad. I had a proper full on meltdown. I was like, I'll just throw myself out the window. And he was like, dude, chill out. But there was, there was a real moment there. And I thought, oh my goodness, yeah, I really am quite. And then I thought, okay, if you're going to make this work, you need to learn how to be able to do that in Spanish as well. Because if you're living in Spain and you need to be able to do that. And I can do that now. And people say to me, God, your Spanish is so good. And I'm like, oh, but you don't understand what the motivation was. I had to be able to be funny in Spanish. I had to be able to do it. And people understand me.
Top level.
Yeah. It's like I needed that. I didn't need to be able to order a coffee and a lasagna. I needed to be able to be funny.
I learned, it's one of the first things I learned. My ex-husband's Iranian, and I know very few things in Farsi, but we would often eat in Iranian restaurants, and they have, when you get yogurt, you can get like mint yogurt or garlic yogurt, and they call it like masto khia or masto. So mast is yogurt, and you go yogurt with something. And one of the first things I learned in Farsi was to say, they have a word hitch, which is like zilch, like nada kind of thing. Yeah. I learned to say masto nada. So it was like masto hitch. And every time I say it in an Iranian restaurant, all the waiters and the manager and everyone would be laughing, and then they run back out. They go, she asked for, and all it means is I just want yogurt with nada, plain yogurt with nada. But it's obviously funny in the, like, because the first time I said it, they laughed. Then after that, I was always like, I have discovered the one thing to make them all laugh. And this was my poor ex-husband, because I still see him, because we still share our daughter's Iranian food. So if we're in Iranian, he's like, looking at me like, don't say it. Like, I'm like, it's the only thing I know that's funny.
So do you think, did your business change once you got your diagnosis?
Oh, I think it's made it harder a little bit.
Why?
Why has it made it harder? I think because I've been giving myself allowances,
which you didn't do before.
Into the ground, and mask, and like just be on the edge of meltdown all the time to try and run the business. And now I'm going, no, I'm close to a meltdown. I'm not going to do that. Like, do you know what I mean? I'm giving myself like allowances and time and stuff. And then the business is not going as well because do you know what I mean? I'm like giving more self-care and saying no to people a little bit. So I'm hoping that eventually it will work out, that it will be just as good. But in the meantime, it's kind of, does that make sense? I don't know.
100%, because I can completely identify with that, because I'm kind of, there's like stuff here and I'm like, should we do this on camera? Should we do this off camera? Recording, off recording. And
the sun is slowly rising. So it's all right if people just listening, but if they're watching, look, I'm getting a really bright. So if I can I go and close that curtain?
Of course you can.
Is that all right? Because it's going to slowly come up my face.
Go. Right, the angel has landed.
I'll be back. Excuse me.
Okay.
I can hear you if you want to keep talking.
Well, this is the part where I said I'd really rather not edit anything out because it's a neurospicy podcast. Therefore, anything can and will happen.
There we go. I am back. Sorry. Yes, that's a lot better.
Yeah, that makes a big difference to the colour. Cool. I've got like a big glow coming in there, but I'm like, it's a big hassle moving my curtain because it's all like nicely tied over there. And I'm like, I'm not going to bother. I'm just going to leave it as it is.
We have ADHD, so we're allowed to just have to get up and do something in the middle of it.
Yeah. No, but what you were saying that actually interesting about the because I've been self-employed like my entire life, and I've tried to go into jobs. Like the way I say tried to go into jobs. I've tried jobs various times and they just don't work for me. And I've been self-employed for such a long time now. And when I started to I think it was the perimenopause stuff that really like got me, and I was like, why can't I do this? What is wrong with me? And a bit like you, eldest daughter was like, Mum, I've been thinking, and I don't want you to be offended by this. And I'm like, right. And then I was like, yeah, I was kind of ADHD. I kind of, yeah. And she's like, really? And I was like, yeah. And she's like, oh, okay. So then we had a conversation about it. And she's like, right, let's look at some supplements. And we did all of those things. And I kind of felt like I got it under control. And then the Asperger's conversation comes up now. And it was like, And then a bit like you, I've kind of gone, oh, but I just can't do that. I just can't. And if I do that, I'm going to end up like really tired, or like I'm not going to have any spoons left, or whatever the analogy is that you want to use. And it was just like, yeah. So a bit like you, I've gone from being full on, I wake up at 5 and go, oh, I'll just go downstairs and start work. And just dum, 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 dum. And all of a sudden I'm like, no, I'm tired. I'm going to stay in bed.
Yeah.
And I'm going to stay in bed till 7. And then I get up and I've not got as much time to do those things, but I feel better.
Yeah.
And then but like you're saying, that's 2 hours of advancing work that I don't get done anymore. So you're kind of sitting there going, and I've noticed that as well. So I completely agree with you.
I do think that I'll get it sorted in that, like, it is, and you talk about perimenopause. I literally started HRT 7 days ago.
Okay.
So it's been a fun week. But I feel like it's time of life as well, because my youngest is just about to go off to university. So I think there's an awful lot to do around that. So whereas I've gone so my oldest is 30 and my youngest is 20, so there's a 10-year gap.
Yeah.
So it's been 30 years that there has not been the option really for a lot of self-care. I mean, there is around it, but there hasn't been the option to like to kind of, like you say, stay in bed till 7. There's
been too many responsibilities. Yes.
I mean, like, so you know what I mean? It's like there's just not been that, because I've been like single mother and I've been having to run the companies, and like you, I've tried going into work. Managers don't like me. Clients love me. Just don't like me. Very bad at paperwork, and they always want reports filling out, and so I've made sure in my business that I just do the jobs that I can do really well, and then I can't do, then the assistant manager handles, because I'm like, can't do that then. So that's been really helpful. But yeah, for 30 years there's always been that motivation of like, oh my goodness, so I've got to get the dogs and the rabbits and the fish and the kids and
but the thing is as well though, because you can because you can, you do it, and because you can. And I remember years ago, this was before any of the neurodivergent stuff even came up, and I remember sitting there one day and thinking, I really should keep a diary, just because I can keep everything in my head and I can remember everything, and I don't need to look at a diary doesn't mean that I have to. If I keep a diary, I can empty my head out a little bit. And there was this like epiphany moment of like, oh wow, imagine having my head a little bit emptier. How interesting would that be? And I remember a time when people would say to me, can I have an appointment? And I go like, when would you like it? And they'd be like, 3 weeks and Thursday. And I'd go, yeah, that's fine. And I could do those things. And then I was like, but of course that took up so much mental capacity, because I had that agenda, that diary constantly in my head, and and I just thought, this isn't actually helpful for me at all. So now people say to me, what are you doing tomorrow afternoon? And I'm like, I don't know, I'm gonna have to check. But that was definitely a thing that I thought, Jude, you need to stop that. You can, but you don't have to, because you're just wasting so much mental energy over that. It's so silly. You don't have to be proud of the fact you can do that.
I was like that with clients. So because the company was quite small, we only had like 6 or 7 clients. So I didn't have files and files and files, and GDPR as well. Like there's not a lot of their information that we should be writing down and keeping anyhow. So it's like, if it's in my head, no one can ever steal it.
Yeah.
Head is GDPR compliant, you know.
Yeah.
And, but then as we slowly edged up more and more, I think we've got about 12, 13 clients now. And I'm suddenly like, oh, what if I just like forget to invoice one? Do you know what I mean? Because before I was like 7 invoices, boom, 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 that's done. It's all done, you know. And yeah, now I think that's part of it as well, is it's sort of pushing like, oh, this isn't something that can just, like you say, go from brain power, or shouldn't have to just go from brain power. But I'm forgetting words now. I'm forgetting.
Well, that is a thing. And I've noticed that the boys went to the UK with me for the first time in December last year. Yeah, last year. And since they've been making more of an effort speaking English. And since they've been making more of an effort speaking English, I've also been speaking more English. But then I'm also finding that I'm like, I'm missing things, and I'm losing words, and I'm like, what even is this? But I think there's an element of, because we've been on the ball for so many years, I think we can allow ourselves to just be tired. You know, I say to the boys, I'm like, it's 10:30 at night. I've been speaking my second language all day. I'm tired. I'm not speaking Spanish anymore. And those of you who don't understand English, it's not my problem. Whereas before, I would have been like, no, I must remember that word. I must stop a minute and think. And I'd get myself, like, I'd overwork my brain to pull out the information that was there, because it's like, well, of course the information's there. I just have to pull it out.
Yeah, yeah.
Whereas I'm not doing that. I know, I'm just like, no, can't do that.
Yeah. I still prioritize my daughter over myself. There's only the 2 of us that live here now, because the lads are grown up and gone. And we're both autistic ADHD. So because she got diagnosed first, it would always be, of course, you eat the thing you need, or you, do you know what I mean? And normally so she hates to put her hands in dirty water, and I hate it as well. Who doesn't? But I can handle it with gloves on. She can't even handle it with gloves on, the feeling of the gloves or anything. So, but she loves to cook. So I'm always like, you cook, I'll clean, no problem, blah, blah. And but an example, so just before we started this podcast tonight, she was like, I have to get a piece of paper with my address on it. I need it. I have to send it by 6 o'clock. And I was like, look, I've told you all day that I've got this podcast, and I only ate lunch at 5:30 today. So I was like, really sorry. Like, you've told me earlier I could have done. She's like, no. So before, I always would have gone, of course, like, you're autistic, so I will help you, because if I'm neurotypical, then that's the onus.
The onus kind of falls on me. Yeah.
And as her mother, the onus still does fall on me.
Yeah.
But more now, as she's old, she's an adult, and I also know. So sometimes she'll be like, why are you doing that? I'm like, because I'm autistic and I'm overwhelmed. And she has to just go, oh, okay. Because what can she say? Do you know what I mean? It gives us a nice shared language that we didn't have before.
Mm-hmm.
Get annoyed with each other less now, because rather than just going, because I didn't like that you did that, now we go, because I'm just feeling so overwhelmed by everything. And it's really interesting to not blame it, but the reason behind it, you know, is that you're more aware it's because you're tired or you haven't got any spoons left, rather than that person just did that thing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of nicer to sort of put it back.
Interesting you're saying that as well, about the language that you use, because I remember, like, I just say, I'm just tired, and I've used that phrase in my lifetime, I'm just tired. And I remember the words coming out of my mouth and thinking, but that's not true. You're not actually tired. You've got loads of energy, and inside your head right now, you're digga, and you could go and do whatever. If you wanted to do something fun, you could go and do it. What that comment really means is, right here, right now, I've had enough of this. I've had enough of this. I'm tired of this. Yeah. And I realized that, and I was like, And it's interesting. Obviously, the boys are only like 13 and 12, but I'm able to have conversation with them, and I just didn't know to have with the girls when they were younger. Yeah. And it's really interesting, because we're having those conversations, and both of them are spectrum-ish. We haven't gone down that route yet, but it may happen. I love the terminology. It may happen. Yeah. And I'm able to just say to them that I just can't. I don't have any space left. And I'm like, look, I've got like a million trillion things going on in my head at once, and all three of you come, because I've got my stepson as well, he's 10, who as well. And he, in fact, we laugh about this because him and Ollie are very, very similar. Very similar. So there's that added element there of me understanding a lot more about things now, because I understand myself. But the conversation, I'll go back to that. We're able to have those conversations now, and I'm able to just say to them, look, I'm overwhelmed. I've got so much going on in my head right now, and all three of you are asking me different questions about completely different things that I really don't give a shit about. like Minecraft, wonderful, lovely, but not right now, because I'm thinking about like paying the rent in 3 days, or I'm thinking about like the burst pipe upstairs that I need to get fixed. And they're like, and I'm like, what should I give priority to? And they're like, evidently the things that are in your head. I'm like, thank you. Can I just come back to you later? But you will have to remind me, because I will forget.
Yeah.
And they're like, and but we can have those conversations, because before I didn't have those conversations. Before I'd just blow up and be like overwhelmed and be like, everything was and I didn't understand any of that, which I'm kind of sorry about, but I'm loving the fact that my older children are really understanding that, and kind of looking back and going, wow, like you were like, my goodness, what you managed to do when you were like 23, 24, knowing what we know now is like, wow.
I like the you saying that you use the word tired a lot, and we have so many different understood words for it now. So like my daughter and I will go, I'm in waiting mode, because there's tired where you're actually tired, you need to go to sleep. There's tired where you're overwhelmed and everything's like stressful and you just need the stress to calm down. And then you're tired like you're hungry. But then there's also that tired of you're not at all tired, but you can't do anything because a phone call's coming at 3 o'clock and it's now 11. Anything happen in that 4 hours, or someone said, I'll call you back. They've been on the phone, they go, I'll call you back. You can't do anything. Waiting for them to call.
they're going to call back any minute, and I'll be on the toilet or I'll be doing something, and I can't do anything.
Like whole days will go by in just waiting mode.
So how many years did you find you knew that you did it but didn't realize what was happening? Because I used to get really mad at myself, because at one point I was studying during the day and I was working at night. And then if I didn't have any classes during the day, so I was managing my own time at home. So that was a bit difficult back then. It's easier now, but then it was difficult. And I remember thinking, I've got to go to work at 6. And just that mental thing of, I've got to be at work at 6, but I don't have to be anywhere else. I so struggled with that. And I remember getting so overwhelmed and being like, and I didn't understand why I can't go. And Sam would come home from work and you got a phone in sick for me. And I'd be like, what? And I'd be literally, you've got a phone in, I can't go. And he's like, and I just got myself in such a tiz, because I got myself so mad. And now I understand it all. But back then I think, good grief. I suppose those are the things that maybe you would grieve about now, that you kind of look and think, gosh, if I'd known then, things could have been so different.
Yeah, I think my biggest grief, that's why I said, well, this turned into a counseling session. My biggest grief is that my whole life, people liked me when they first met me. Most did. Sometimes I'm a bit much. Sometimes people just didn't like me straight off, but it was rare. So normally they think I'm lovely and exuberant and charming, because I'm managing to mask enough, but be bubbly enough that people like me. And then I'd be responsible for something like turning up to their birthday party, or taking them somewhere on time, or being quiet when they were tired. And I am not good at doing those things. And so reasonably soon, or also just telling the truth. So sometimes people would go, oh wait, I'll tell you that in a minute. Sorry. So people would like me to begin with, and then quite quickly they often wouldn't, especially in groups. I'm not good at understanding unwritten group rules. So I'll just break the group rules all the time. So whether it's colleagues at work, or classmates at university, or on courses, or kids in school, or whatever, ever I went, I got bullied. So even as an adult, I went on a counseling training course. And because a deaf friend of mine was going, and they wouldn't pay for an interpreter, but they said, if you find an interpreter who wants to get the qualification, we'll let them do it for free.
Okay.
Like, we won't pay you, but you can come along to all the classes and you can get the thing. So that was on this course, but I was also interpreting, which put me in a weird position where I wasn't really one of the people. And I remember on like the first day, the teacher goes, so on a scale of like 1 to 10, how much do you like yourself and how confident do you feel? So she goes to the first one, and the first one goes 1. And I was like, oh, come on. Are you really a 1? Like, or you're just saying that because that's a group rule, isn't it? To like really put yourself down. I was like last of the whole thing. And then it goes to the next one. She goes, 2. And then the next one really pushed the envelope out. She was like, no, honestly, I feel like sometimes I like myself like 3 out of 10. And then the next one goes, no, 1 out of 10. And they went around the whole room, 1, 2, or 3 out of 10. And I was like second to last. And I just went 8 like this. And from that moment on, I was hated. Absolutely. From that moment, they were like, you're full of yourself. But I was autistic. I couldn't say 2 or 3. Like, I know I do things wrong. And I really cringe about the things I do wrong. But I actually think I'm quite cool. Like, when I'm alone, I like me, you know.
Yeah.
So, and also, I just know I'm quite confident. Like, I will happily stand on stage in front of thousands of people and talk to them. Like, I've just been raised.
Isn't that easier? Sorry, I'm going to interrupt. I find somebody said that to me once, and I was like, no, give me like 5 people. And I'm like, shit. Put me in front of like 5,500 and I'm like, yeah, I can do this.
Yeah, absolutely.
No problem. I can be Mrs. Personality and I can bring it, but 5 people.
Maybe that's the masking. I don't know.
Yeah.
So I just was like 8, and that was it. They like relentlessly bullied me. They wouldn't share paper with me. No one would do pair work with me. When they got told to split into small groups to meet up during the week, every group went, I'm sorry, ours is full. I don't know how a small group is full because you just meet and be. They all said no, and I had to drop out of the course. These, let me remind you, it was a counselling course. These are all future counsellors. I was like, oh my goodness. And I was this nice to them all. I never said anything horrible to anyone. The only thing I can pin it back to is I said I like myself 8 out of 10. So there's just that. I broke that rule, and that was it. Like, that was on the first day, and that was, don't like her. And so, I mean, that one's like so obvious, but but the kids that bullied me in school, and it's just been like relentless in every group. The school gate as a parent is probably one of the worst places, and the relief when I was home educating was amazing. And then some of the mums home educating started bullying me. I was like, what is it about me? Like, aren't I nice? But maybe I'm not. It's something I don't know.
I think there's an element there of making people feel uncomfortable with your level of self-comfortableness. That isn't even a proper word, but you know what I mean.
Maybe I say stuff you're not supposed to.
Yeah, and just being, I think there's just an element there of just, it's funny you say that at the school gate, because I remember I had a group of friends, and we were sitting there one day and we did a couple of drinks, and I was like, I don't fit in. And they were like, what do you mean you don't? Of course you fit in. I was like, I totally don't. I totally don't. And it's nothing to do with the fact that I'm a Scouser living in Scotland. It's just like, I totally don't fit in. No, I don't speak to anybody at the school gate. And they were like, well, you speak to us. I was like, yeah, but none of you are ever at the school gate. And we speak to each other. Why do we speak to each other? Because we're all a bit mad. We've ended up making this small group of the 4 of us because we're all a bit nuts. But yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? How?
And I think that's what made me feel the most grief, when the grief kicked in. So I was really happy for like a week or 2 weeks. I was really happy. And then my brain started like drifting back through different scenarios in my life. And I started feeling really sad for myself as a child. So I started thinking about the church and how the preacher had said one Sunday, everyone should wake up at 6 a.m. every morning and have a list of people they're praying for and pray through the list. And I suddenly last year, after my diagnosis, went, oh my God, no one else did that. Like, they sat in the church, they listened to him say that, and then they went home and they lived their lives. They weren't autistic. I went home, aged 11, set my alarm, and for 4 years woke up at 6 o'clock every morning to pray through the list. And no one did that. Like, no one expected you to do that. They all understood it's this unwritten rule that the preacher has to find something to say every Sunday, because just saying, love your neighbor and, you know, treat others how you want to be treated and love God and, you know, make the world a better place.
Be a good human being.
Stretch over 30 years of a preacher's career. So he, usually he, occasionally she, but in our church is always he, had to find something to say every Sunday. So they get more and more specific with what they need to say. And I was following every tiny little specific rule that no one else would even think, oh my God, you'd have to follow those rules. But no one would tell me not to, because it was me being good. They're not going to tell me, no, don't wake up and pray. But it was exhausting. I was exhausted.
Burnout mode. Yeah.
And so thinking back and going, that's not fair. Like, that's not fair. That's because I was autistic and no one said, Ruth, actually, you don't have to do that. That's not a thing. And the same in school, or the same with, like, when they bullied me in school, when the other kids bullied me, or when the adults have bullied me as an adult, each time they've been bullying an autistic person because of their autism. It's not been just me. Like, I'm not, do you know what I mean? I don't go out and like steal from people, or I don't know, like, you know, trick old ladies up in the street. Like, it's just that uncanny valley. It's just that I don't quite fit. I'm just a little bit off, and I like maybe make a joke at the wrong time, or I don't laugh when I'm supposed to. Oh, and I did. My daughter recently, I don't know if she should have said her name, but anyway, my daughter recently, she said that she'd been reading about, she came over to me and she's like, oh my goodness, I just found out this amazing thing. I'm so glad I found out before university. She said, you know, when you smile, you have to smile at people. And I'm like, yeah, because you have to like meet them, you smile and they're talking to you and you smile so that they know that you're interested in what they're saying. It's like, yeah. She said, when you turn away, you're not supposed to just drop your smile straight away, because then they think your smile was fake. And I was like, what? She goes, yeah, you're supposed to turn away and hold your smile longer and then walk away a little bit. And then when they can't see you, slowly let your smile come back to neutral. And I was like, what? She's like, yeah, because it's the thing amongst neurotypicals that if you're smiling and you turn around and you go like that, it means you were faking the smile. And I'm like, well, we kind of are faking the smile. You know? She's like, yeah, but you have to hold it longer. It's like, oh my goodness, I was in my 50s before I learned that. And probably a lot of me not being liked is
part
smile masking with the smile and then dropping it too quickly. And if anyone saw me do that, they wouldn't understand that I was interested, but it's not natural for me to smile when I'm interested. I prefer to not make eye contact. I prefer to look down, look serious, think about what they're saying, but that doesn't encourage the person talking. So I've learned to make eye contact.
Yeah, see, I was laughing. We've talked about this so many times, but in my life, I've been chatting to somebody, and they go, and they look behind them, and then I'm like, oh my God, I'm not evidently. So I'm chatting away, and I'm looking over there, and it, you know, it used to happen to me all the time when I was younger, and then of course as you get older, you're like, why are people still doing that? Why? What? And now I'm like, oh, now I know. I realized just how much I was looking over there, evidently more than a normal person would.
Yeah.
And people would be talking to me, and you could see them kind of get a little bit disconcerted and kind of go, and look back at me again, and I'm like, what is wrong with you? Why are you doing that?
My daughter always does it to the top of my head.
Okay.
So just ever so slightly, and I'm always like, I think that's something. All the time she was little, I used to be like, is there something on my hair? She'd be like, no. And then only later, but I often can't speak if I'm all right looking at someone when they're speaking. I'm really good at that now. Unless it's complicated information.
Yeah.
And then I can't process the face, looking at a face at the same time as, so if they're like listing off 10 things I have to do, then I have to look away to remember them. But when I'm talking, I can't keep eye contact. I just forget what I was going to say because I'm just like, do you know what I mean?
But I think there's, I remember learning when I learned NLP many years ago, there was an element there of obviously your eyes go where you're remembering. If you're like feeling the emotion, so your eyes will go where like the emotion was felt, or so we go looking, and I'm like, oh yeah, I just go looking at my head when I'm talking. I just go looking. My brain takes my eyes to where I'm looking for the information.
Yeah.
So and I realized I did it, but I just thought that was like, oh, that's what people do. But I think evidently I do it an awful lot more
Yeah. No, that's
Yeah.
Someone
So,
said,
go on.
oh, we got time. Someone said to me recently, I've been working for 12 years at this one university's graduation ceremonies, and always the same stagehand is like my point guy. So he's worked for me, with me, not for me, but like brings me water if I need it on stage or whatever, for 12 years. And then only this year I got my diagnosis. So I was sitting backstage at the graduations this year, and the women who were handling the certificates looked over at me and went, "Why are you eating like a bread roll with nothing in it?" And I was like, "No, I'm good. I just needed quick food." They're like, "We can get you cheese, we can get you butter, we can." I'm like, no. And then I joked and I went, "Did I mention I'm autistic?" And I had already told him I'd got my diagnosis, but he was stood next to me and he just really quietly went, he's like, "Yeah, but I don't think you are. I don't think you are autistic." He's like, I work with autistic people. I don't think you are. And I felt like something was being ripped away from me. And I thought, okay, he's not meaning to insult me. Like, I don't need to cancel him. Just breathe. and I sort of went, and I just went, "You need to enlarge your view of what autism is."
Mm-hmm.
And I was talking later to Maya and thinking, like, actually, I still now don't tell people quite often that I'm autistic until they know me better.
Mm-hmm.
Because otherwise they might not dislike me so quickly now, because they go, "Oh, she's being like that because she's autistic," but they also will not make friends with me, or they'll see me, like, they'll make me into their little box of what they think.
But then isn't that the thing about what you were saying before about, what they could teach in church and religion about, treat people how you expect. There's a lack of respect there, but I think there's also a stigmatism and just people being put into boxes, as you say, and there's like, oh, that's such an autistic thing to do. And I think I remember, when Shannon's 29 and when they're going back to when they were in school, they had a kid in the class and the little brother was autistic and he was non-verbal and he was pretty non-functioning in many respects. That was autism.
Yeah,
That was what was considered to be autism back then.
and I think that's what this guy meant, because he's like, I've worked with autistic people for years, and I'm like, well, obviously not like, even the level 1, level 2 isn't great, but I was like, oh, obviously not autistic people like me, but you have to understand, like, I am autistic.
Yeah, and of course, and I think as well, people don't grasp the concept of autism and ADHD together. You've got two different things battling on inside of you all of the time.
Yeah, it's like a whole separate thing, isn't it? You can spot other ADHDs now.
Yeah.
Because I know which of my friends are ADHD. When I meet someone else that's almost like the same color personality, do you know what I mean? Like matches. I'm like, oh, you match this group of people. Not that I'm a psychologist, but I think I find now that I'll give people like a day or two of being with me. So that might, if we're on a holiday or something, that'd be 2 days, but otherwise it might be a couple of weeks, depending on how often they see me, until they know who I am and what I'm like. Okay? And then I'll say I'm autistic, and then their idea of autism has to expand rather than their idea of me diminishing.
Yes.
Their idea of autism. Do you know what I mean? So I do still mask a little.
Okay.
Just for that.
But I suppose there's a safety zone, isn't there? There's a comfort zone thing, and I think that would be expected of anybody. You wouldn't like walk in now the way the world is as well. And certain experiences we've had, by the time that we get to the age that we are, you discover that you can't just go in and tell everybody about you straight away, because it does get used against you in certain ways. Like you said, you've been bullied because you've gone straight in and been honest, and you're like, do I really want to go through that again? Not really. So I'll just keep myself within these parameters for the time being. Then when I feel safe and everything's good and I know it's okay, I'll let them know a little bit more. I've got a friend, she lives here, we don't see each other very often, and when I last saw her, I said, I was having a conversation with Shannon, apparently, like, I'm ADHD and she said, oh, well, that makes so much sense for a lot of things when we're younger then, doesn't it? I meant, really? Does it? And she's like, yeah, but we didn't have time to talk about it. I can't wait till we meet. And I say, well, it stepped up a level. We're not just sitting on the ADHD anymore, my love. So it's gonna be really interesting to see from her perspective, because she's a teacher now as well, and she does work with kids who've got learning difficulties and various things. So I'm interested to find have that conversation with her, because it's always nice to get to know ourselves a little bit better and understand our things. But yeah. So anything else that you would say obviously you're happy that you've got your diagnosis, and I can completely comprehend what you said, because I had a conversation with somebody when I was going to get my diagnosis, and I said, look, quite funny, I said to Shannon, oh, look, I've got to go pay for it, private. I really, what's the point? Because what if I go in and do all the stuff? She said, mother, they are not going to tell you that you do not have autism.
I know, that was such a big fear of mine when I went for the ADHD.
I was like, okay.
Yeah, be like, no, like that would just be awful, and then everything would just be like, no, it was genuinely just you messing up.
Yeah. She's like, they will so not do that, Mum. Really, like, just go and get the diagnosis. I was like,
thanks for that.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that confirmation. I've kind of lost my train there. What was I going to say to you at the end? I think, would you say that we've talked about the grief, we've talked about is there anything now that you would say, maybe from a self-care point of view, what do you know for you is self-care, and what do you make sure is a non-negotiable self-care thing for you that you do now?
Oh, I think I'm still on a real early learning curve. So I've had my son's girlfriend is very good at keeping boundaries.
Okay.
I'm terrible. And do you know Ed Sheeran's song where he says, I gave all my oxygen to people who could breathe? So again, I don't know whether it was the upbringing in the religion or whether it's the autism. I think ADHD, I think it's a mix of it all. But this thing of like, I'm such a fixer. And so if I have something and someone needs it, so if I'm holding these headphones and someone's like, oh, I lost my headphones, I'm like, I love my headphones. And I just give away, even if I need these headphones, if I have it, I give it. And then sometimes I'll give it when I don't have it. Do you know what I mean? Just if it's
100%.
I need it. And I haven't learnt it yet, but I've had my son's girlfriend staying here for a month over the summer, and on a daily basis, she's almost been like a daily counselor, going, okay, so see how you just did that, or this thing, you didn't have to give that, or that thing, they could have done that themselves, or you didn't have to drive 6 hours for that person, because if you'd said no, they were. And sometimes she'll go, you know how that person wanted £20 off? And I'll be like, yeah. She goes, do you know they're a millionaire? Like, they asked for £20 off because they always ask for £20 off. They didn't need the £20 off. You need the £20. And I'm like, oh, and she's just making me start seeing, like, awesome. Not to never give anything to anyone, but not to always give everything to everyone.
Yeah.
Prioritize.
Yeah.
And sometimes, like, count myself worthy in that list of priorities.
Yes. I like that. She sounds awesome.
Yeah, she's cool.
Good. Well, I think that we're done. So if you were to say, from like flipping back to the business perspective again, from a point of view of being able to offer services to support entrepreneurs with disabilities. So we'll go blah, 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 and we'll switch channels from just having a chat about that. Yeah. What would your business, the BrightAlternative, because I kept on saying it with an S before, and it's not with an S, it's with
one alternative. It's only us.
One alternative. So what do you guys offer to entrepreneurs that were possibly looking for assistance?
Oh, so if you're UK based and you have any mental health issue or neurodiversity or physical disability, then it's usually fully funded completely. So that's a really good thing to say. And the thing is that normally people have to do, it's a really complicated application process and can take months. And people are left to do it alone, and therefore they often fail to get the funding. So we assist with all that for free, and we try and be so lovely assisting with all that you then, when you then get assigned a PA or whatever it is that they said you can have a job aid or whatever, then we sort of hope that you'll use our staff for that. And we have everything. Yeah, we've got some people, I don't know, we've got some YouTubers who needed agents, and so we got access to it, funding for them to have a PA, but we put in a PA who had previously been an agent, and now they've got TV presenting jobs. So like, so we try and match, and like, we've got a musician, so we got a music graduate to work as his PA, because then she knew the music business and she could upload all his stuff onto the like selling sites and stuff, because she knew it. So we try and like, we don't just go, oh, here's the PA, they'll do. we like really carefully look at that person's business and go, who could we put in? Because government funding just says we're giving you a PA or a support worker, but we try and make sure that their CV like
really fits the bill. Yeah.
It's the business. Yeah.
Yeah.
And if they want to contact us, it's just info@brightalternative.co.uk.
Awesome. All of those details are also going to be in the information. So
I'm happy to advise people outside the UK if they want advice, but I don't know how to get free stuff for them.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think there is actually an access to work here in Spain. I do not think. I may look into it, but I don't think there is. Yeah. Okay. It has been wonderful. And I'm so happy that you came on. And guys, anybody who's listening and would like to make contact with Ruthanne, you will have our contact details there. And I hope you've enjoyed the podcast. If you have any questions at all, then you can contact us. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us today on Masters of Masking. I hope this episode brought you new insights, a new sense of connection, and maybe even a smile. Remember, whether you're just discovering your own neurodivergence or have been navigating it for years, you're part of a community that values, understands, and celebrates every unique aspect of who you are. We're all in this together, learning, growing, and embracing our beautifully diverse minds. Stay kind to yourself, keep exploring, and we'll see you next time.
Judith helps you transform your life by healing your past. Through nervous system care and self-discovery, she guides you on a path to a calmer, more empowered you. This work is especially important for neurodivergent individuals, as it provides deeper understanding and healing of the nervous system, helping to manage overwhelm, reduce stress, and foster self-compassion. Ready to take the next step? Contact Judith today and start your journey towards lasting, positive change. You can find more details at www.becomingyouinsideout.com.